Millions of years before modern humans built cities or gazed at smartphones, a remarkable species took the very first steps toward what we now call civilization, a species that walked the razor-thin line between ape and man. Homo habilis, often overshadowed by its more famous descendants, was not just another primitive hominin, it was a game-changer, the first of our kind to wield tools with purpose, to scavenge with strategy, and to survive in a world teeming with lethal predators and evolutionary dead ends. But who exactly were these forgotten ancestors? What made them human before humanity even existed? In this video, we unravel the haunting mysteries of Homo habilis, the handyman, a creature whose mind was growing faster than its body, whose stone tools whispered of intelligence, and whose presence forever altered the course of evolution. Why did Homo habilis develop a larger brain? Could it have begun the path to language and society? What deadly beasts stalked it in the African savannas, and how did it manage to live and even thrive in such a perilous environment? And most chilling of all, how close did Homo habilis come to failing, vanishing from history as just another forgotten fossil? From ancient tools found buried in Tanzanian soil to possible evidence of confrontation with saber-toothed predators, this story is not just about bones, it's about survival, adaptation, and the first flickers of the human spark. Prepare to journey back over 2 million years, where every step taken by Homo habilis shaped the future you live in today. You're not just watching a history lesson, you're meeting your most ancient ancestor face to face. What secrets still lie buried beneath the dust of time? Stay with us, because the truth is far older and far stranger than you think. Chapter 1. The Rise of the Handy Human, roughly 2.4 million years ago. In the shifting grasslands and forests of East and Southern Africa, a new species quietly emerged. Not quite ape, not fully human, but something remarkable in between. This was Homo habilis, the handyman, the first known species to be classified under the genus Homo, and arguably the first true human in our evolutionary story. Its discovery, beginning with a single molar in 1959 and followed by more substantial fossils in 1960 in Olduvai Gorge, Tanzania, reshaped everything scientists thought they knew about human origins. The fossils, including parts of a juvenile skull, hand bones, and feet, pointed to a bipedal primate with both ape-like and distinctly human traits. What set Homo habilis apart was not just its anatomy, but its behavior. This species had a brain size ranging from 500 to 800 cubic centimeters, a substantial increase over the 400 cc average of earlier Australopithecines. But more telling than brain volume was what that brain enabled: the deliberate creation and use of tools. Associated with the earliest known stone tool, tradition, the Oldowan industry, Homo habilis used simple yet effective stone flakes and cores to butcher meat, crack bones for marrow, and possibly manipulate wood and plant material. These weren't random rocks picked up on a whim, they were selected and shaped with intention, showing an unprecedented leap in cognitive ability and manual dexterity. Living in a time when Africa teemed with dangerous predators, from crocodiles and saber-toothed cats to massive birds and other hominins, Homo habilis relied not on strength or speed, but on intelligence, group cooperation, and adaptability to survive. It likely scavenged more than it hunted, using its tools not only to harvest meat, but also to intimidate rivals and predators. This shift in diet, from primarily plant-based to meat-enriched, may have fueled the metabolic demands of a growing brain, creating a feedback loop of cognitive development. The social lives of Homo habilis remain speculative, but signs of communal tool sites and shared butchering grounds suggest early forms of social structure, perhaps even rudimentary communication. While it still retained curved fingers and longer arms suited for climbing, holdovers from its tree-dwelling ancestors, its pelvis, foot structure, and stride confirm bipedalism was central to its movement, freeing the hands for tool use. Even so, the classification of Homo habilis has not been without controversy. Some paleoanthropologists argue that its body was too primitive to belong in the genus Homo, suggesting it should instead be considered a late-stage Australopithecine. Yet others maintain that its brain size, tool use, and behavioral complexity clearly justify its placement as the first human. These debates highlight the mosaic nature of evolution, where anatomical and behavioral traits don't evolve in a neat, linear fashion, but in overlapping and sometimes contradictory ways. Whether or not it fits cleanly into the human genus, one fact remains. Homo habilis represents a critical turning point in our story, the moment when instinct began to give way to ingenuity, when survival meant more than just running or hiding. It meant thinking, planning, acting with purpose. Though its fossils are fragmentary and its time on Earth limited, going extinct around 1.65 million years ago, the legacy of Homo habilis is profound. It paved the way for Homo erectus and ultimately Homo sapiens, passing down the cognitive and technological foundations that define our species today. In its stones, we see the first sparks of invention, in its bones, the shape of things to come, and in its story, we witness the dawn of humanity itself, a quiet yet monumental rise of the handy human who dared to shape the world around him, and in doing so, shaped the destiny of every future generation. Chapter 2: Brains, Tools, and Survival Tactics. The evolutionary success of Homo habilis was not built on brute strength or physical dominance, but rather on something far more powerful: the gradual awakening of a mind capable of adaptation, strategy, and tool-making. While earlier hominins like Australopithecus had begun to exhibit bipedalism and primitive behavior, Homo habilis took a definitive leap in both cognition and cultural development, which is perhaps best symbolized by its revolutionary relationship with tools. Unlike earlier stone artifacts thought to have been created by Australopithecines, the tools of Homo habilis associated with the Oldowan industry were not just broken stones but deliberately crafted instruments, chipped and flaked to create sharp edges. These tools were used to butcher carcasses, crush bones for nutrient-rich marrow, and possibly to manipulate wood and fibrous plants, tasks that demanded not just motor skill, but a working understanding of cause and effect, material properties, and technique. This tool use likely extended beyond mere convenience. It was a matter of survival. In a landscape filled with dangerous predators such as leopards, saber-toothed cats, crocodiles, and even giant baboon-like apes, Homo habilis was a small, physically vulnerable primate, estimated at just 4 to 5 feet tall and 30 to 40 kilograms in weight, living in a world where it was often prey rather than predator. To survive, it had to become a master of timing and opportunity, often acting as a scavenger rather than a hunter. Evidence suggests that Homo habilis may have specialized in confrontational scavenging, approaching fresh kills made by larger predators and using tools, along with group intimidation, to drive them away, gaining access to meat that other animals couldn't or wouldn't consume. This behavior, combined with growing brain size, suggests the early emergence of planning and social coordination, perhaps even basic communication to warn, coordinate, or share within the group. The evolutionary link between diet and cognition is also critical to understanding this species. Meat consumption provided a dense source of calories that allowed for the metabolic support of a growing brain, and that brain, while still primitive compared to modern humans, displayed significant development in key regions. Endocasts of Homo habilis skulls suggest the beginning of reorganization in the frontal and parietal lobes, regions linked to problem-solving, planning, and potentially even the first stirrings of language capacity. There is even tantalizing evidence, such as right-slanted cut marks on teeth, suggesting the possible development of handedness, a feature deeply tied to brain lateralization and symbolic thinking. But while their brains were advancing, their bodies retained a mosaic of traits. Long arms and curved fingers hint at continued tree-climbing ability, while their pelvis and foot structure show commitment to bipedal walking. This dual adaptation to both terrestrial and arboreal life indicates that Homo habilis was versatile, moving through both open grasslands and wooded environments with relative ease. Their foot bones reveal a mix of human-like stability and ape-like flexibility, suggesting they were not yet efficient endurance runners like Homo erectus, but had begun the transition toward more energetically efficient walking. Some researchers even speculate that limited endurance running might have emerged in this species, supported by anatomical hints in the foot and leg bones, though this remains debated. Their hands, on the other hand, show a unique blend of strength and precision capable of powerful grips for climbing, but also the fine motor control required for tool manipulation. These physical traits combine to create a creature in flux, no longer just reacting to nature, but beginning to actively shape it. Their social life, while speculative, is also central to understanding how they survived. Fossil evidence suggests Homo habilis lived in groups, likely for protection and cooperation, and that they may have used specific areas repeatedly for butchering, feeding, and resting. Such behavior implies memory, group coordination, and even rudimentary territory, traits foundational to more complex societies. Though language likely did not yet exist in any recognizable form, vocalization, gesture, and expression may have formed the bedrock of communication. Ultimately, Homo habilis was not yet human in the modern sense, but it had set into motion the behaviors and biological changes that would define humanity. In their expanding brains, sharpened stones, and social bonds, we see the roots of everything from innovation to language to cooperation, the very traits that continue to define our species today. Chapter 3. Legacy of a Forgotten Pioneer. Despite living over 2 million years ago and leaving behind only fragmented bones and primitive tools, Homo habilis left a legacy that resonates in the structure of every modern human brain, in every complex tool we create, and in the very concept of what it means to be human. Yet, ironically, this early human pioneer is often overshadowed in public memory by its more famous descendants, Homo erectus, the Great Wanderer, or Neanderthals, the robust survivors of Ice Age Europe. Still, Homo habilis holds an unshakable position in the evolutionary chain, not merely as a biological ancestor, but as the species that marked the true beginning of human behavior. By bridging the gap between ape-like ancestors and the more advanced Homo species, habilis did more than just survive. It innovated. The evolutionary importance of this species lies in its transitional nature. Physically, it was still very much a blend. A short, lightweight body with climbing-friendly limbs and a face that retained many primitive features. But neurologically and behaviorally, it was pioneering new territory. Its brain had grown large enough to support more complex thought, and its hands were refined enough to produce tools with intention. These shifts mark Homo habilis as the first known hominin to cross a critical threshold, using intelligence and technology as its primary survival strategy. This transition was not without trial. Homo habilis lived in a dangerous and dynamic environment, coexisting not only with deadly predators but with other hominins such as Paranthropus boisei, Homo rudolfensis, and eventually Homo erectus. These overlaps raise fascinating and still unanswered questions about competition, coexistence, and possibly even conflict among early human species. Did habilis compete with others for territory, food, and resources? Did toolmaking spread through observation and imitation, or did each species innovate independently? Fossil evidence remains too limited to provide certainty, but what we do know is that Homo habilis persisted for nearly 1 million years, an extraordinary success for a species navigating the treacherous middle ground between predator and prey. Yet even this resilience could not prevent its eventual extinction around 1.65 million years ago. The reasons are still debated. Some scientists believe Homo habilis was gradually replaced through anagenesis by Homo erectus, evolving slowly into a more efficient, upright, large-brained species adapted for long-distance walking and hunting. Others propose that habilis and erectus coexisted for hundreds of thousands of years, and that erectus simply outcompeted its more primitive cousin through better tools, more efficient locomotion, and greater ecological flexibility. Whether through gradual transition or direct replacement, Homo habilis faded into history, but not before laying the groundwork for all that came next. Its use of tools marked the beginning of technological culture. Its growing brain opened the door to planning, communication, and possibly even social organization. Some archaeologists even speculate that Homo habilis constructed primitive shelters or windbreaks using stone rings and gathered sticks, an astonishing thought that suggests not just intelligence, but intention. And though there is no clear evidence of fire use or language in the modern sense, the building blocks of both were likely forming in the neural circuits of this ancient species. We may never know the full story of Homo habilis because time has buried most of it beneath the layers of prehistory. What we do have, scattered bones, stone flakes, worn teeth, fossilized footprints, must be carefully pieced together to reconstruct a life that once thrived in the African plains. But even from these fragments, a powerful image emerges. A being who looked up at the world not only with instinct, but with awareness, who saw opportunity in stone and strategy in survival. Though it is gone, Homo habilis lives on as the quiet architect of human potential, the forgotten pioneer who took the first conscious step down the path that would lead, eventually, to us. In a world where survival demanded more than muscle, habilis chose intelligence, and in doing so, carved out the earliest foundations of humanity's future. As we step away from the shadowy depths of prehistory and look back at Homo habilis, we are not just peering into the distant past, we are witnessing the fragile beginning of what it means to be human. In this small, vulnerable hominin, we find the first unmistakable signs of something extraordinary. The will not just to survive, but to understand and manipulate the world. Homo habilis did not build monuments, sail oceans, or write poetry. It did not master fire or language, but it did something far more profound. It broke the boundary between instinct and thought. It stood upright, walked the savannas, and shaped the first tools ever crafted by human hands. These were not just stones, they were extensions of its mind, symbols of foresight, intention, and innovation. This quiet revolution in cognition and behavior set in motion a chain of evolutionary transformations that would echo forward into every generation that followed. With its expanding brain, improved manual dexterity, and cooperative tendencies, Homo habilis introduced the earliest version of the traits we now take for granted: intelligence, adaptability, and culture. It lived among deadly predators, rival hominins, and environmental upheaval, yet endured for nearly 1 million years, a remarkable testament to its evolutionary success. And though it eventually vanished from the Earth, replaced by its more advanced descendants like Homo erectus, its contribution was not erased. It passed forward a legacy of learning, of making, of thinking that became the very foundation of the human journey. Its tools evolved, its brain became larger, and its descendants would one day explore continents, shape civilizations, and even gaze back into time to rediscover their forgotten ancestor. In many ways, Homo habilis was not just a species, it was a turning point, a living question mark in the fossil record that challenges us to consider how humanity truly began. It reminds us that being human is not a destination reached in a moment, but a long and uneven path paved with failure, adaptation, and incremental genius. It is humbling to think that our complex languages, our towering cities, our philosophy and art, all of it may trace its roots to the hesitant hands of a small hominin striking stone against stone on an ancient African plain. The story of Homo habilis is not just about bones and dates. It's about the birth of curiosity, the spark of invention, and the first steps of a long evolutionary journey that would lead, eventually, to us. And so, as we reflect on this early ancestor, the handy human, we are reminded that every great chapter in history begins with a single, often overlooked moment. Homo habilis was that moment. It was the first to carve, the first to choose, the first to see possibility where others saw only survival. Its name may be fading from memory, but its impact lives on in every mind that dares to imagine something more. It was not the final version of humanity, but it was the first draft, and without it, we would